I am sitting in my truck at 3 in the morning, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles have gone white. The engine hums beneath me as I pull away from the only home I have known for 2 years. 6 months ago I stood at an altar and promised forever to the woman sleeping in our apartment behind me. 6 months ago I thought I had found my person, my future, my everything. Tonight I am driving away from it all, and I am never coming back. I never thought the woman who promised forever would be the one to make me disappear into the night like a ghost. Before I tell you how my marriage ended before it really began, I would love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. If you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, completely hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets worse before it gets better. Let me take you back to where it all started 6 months earlier, when I thought I had found my forever. 2 years before that night in my truck, I met Stephanie at a brewery in Southeast Portland, Oregon. It was a Thursday evening after work, and I had gone there with a couple of buddies from the construction site. I am a carpenter by trade, have been for about 8 years since I finished my apprenticeship. The place was packed with the usual after-work crowd, but I noticed her immediately. She was sitting alone at a corner table, a book open in front of her, completely absorbed. Most people go to bars to socialize, but she seemed content in her own world. What caught my attention was not just that she was reading, it was what she was reading. I could see the cover from where I stood at the bar. It was a book about residential architecture and sustainable building design. That is my world. I have always dreamed of starting my own custom home building company someday. Seeing a woman reading about the thing I am most passionate about felt like some kind of sign. My buddy Jake noticed me staring and gave me a push. "Go talk to her," he said. So I did. I walked over, probably more nervous than I had been in years, and asked if the seat across from her was taken. She looked up, and I swear her smile could have lit up the entire room. Dark hair that fell past her shoulders, warm brown eyes, and this genuine, unguarded expression that made me feel instantly at ease. She gestured to the chair and said she would love some company. That conversation lasted 3 hours. We talked about building techniques, about the craftsman-style homes scattered throughout Portland, about our dreams of someday designing a house from the ground up. She told me she worked in marketing but had always been fascinated by architecture. I told her I spent my days bringing blueprints to life with my hands. When the brewery closed, we moved our conversation to the sidewalk outside. We stood there for another hour, just talking under the streetlights. I learned she loved hiking, that she made incredible homemade bread on weekends, that she had lost her father when she was in college and had been raised by her mother ever since. I told her about growing up in a family of builders, about how I loved the smell of fresh-cut lumber, about how I believed houses had souls. When we finally said goodnight, I asked for her number. She gave it to me without hesitation. The next 6 months were like something out of a movie. We went hiking every weekend at Columbia River Gorge, sometimes just sitting by waterfalls for hours, talking about everything and nothing. She would bake sourdough bread on Sunday mornings, and I would fix things around her apartment that her landlord never got around to. Little things like a leaky faucet or a sticking door. She said I had magic hands. I said she had a magic heart. I met her mother, Patricia, a sweet woman who worked as a nurse and adored her daughter. Patricia welcomed me with open arms, saying she had never seen Stephanie so happy. I brought Stephanie home to meet my parents on a Sunday afternoon. My mom fell in love with her immediately, and my dad, a man of few words, pulled me aside and said that one is a keeper son. Everything felt right. Everything felt easy. After a year together, we moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in Southeast Portland. It was nothing fancy, just 800 square feet on the second floor of an old building, but we made it ours. She filled it with plants and books. I built shelves and a small reading nook by the window. She was sitting alone at a corner table, a book open in front of her, completely absorbed. Most people go to bars to socialize, but she seemed content in her own world. What caught my attention was not just that she was reading, it was what she was reading. I could see the cover from where I stood at the bar. It was a book about residential architecture and sustainable building design. That is my world. I have always dreamed of starting my own custom home building company someday. I found a jeweler in downtown Portland who helped me design a classic solitaire diamond on a white gold band. It took me 6 months of overtime to afford it, but when I held that little velvet box in my hands, I knew it was worth every hour. I planned the proposal for Cannon Beach, the place where we had taken our first weekend trip together. I remember that trip so clearly. We had walked along the beach at sunset, and she had said she could imagine growing old in a place like this. So I brought her back on a Saturday in early spring. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. The waves crashed against Haystack Rock in the distance, and I got down on one knee right there on the sand. I do not remember everything I said. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. But I remember telling her that she was my home, that I wanted to build a life with her, that I could not imagine a single day without her in it. When I opened the box, tears streamed down her face. She nodded before I could even finish. Asking the question pulled me up and kissed me like her life depended on it. "Yes," she whispered against my lips. "Yes, yes, yes." The next 4 months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. We decided on a small ceremony, just 80 people, close friends and family. We found a beautiful barn venue in Willamette Valley, surrounded by vineyards and rolling hills. Stephanie was so excited, constantly showing me Pinterest boards and fabric swatches. I just wanted her to be happy, so I said yes to everything. The flowers, the colors, the menu. All I cared about was marrying her. The wedding day arrived in mid-September. The weather was perfect, warm but not too hot, with just enough breeze to keep everyone comfortable. Golden leaves were starting to fall from the trees around the property. I stood at the altar in a charcoal gray suit, my best man Jake beside me, watching as the guests took their seats. Then the music started, and Stephanie appeared at the end of the aisle. She wore a simple white dress, nothing too elaborate, just elegant and timeless. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands framing her face. She carried a bouquet of wildflowers, but what I remember most was her smile. She looked at me like I was the only person in the world. When she reached me, she took my hands, and I could feel them trembling slightly. Or maybe it was my hands that were shaking. Probably both. The ceremony was short and sweet. We had written our own vows. I told her she was my foundation, my shelter, my light. She told me I promised to love you in every season, through every storm, for as long as we both shall live. I believed every word. I slipped the ring onto her finger. She slipped one onto mine, and the officiant pronounced us husband and wife. I kissed her, and everyone cheered. In that moment, I felt like the luckiest man alive. The reception was a blur of dancing, laughter, and toasts. My dad gave a speech about how he knew from the moment he met Stephanie that she was the one for me. Her mother cried happy tears and welcomed me into their family. Jake made some joke about me finally settling down. We cut the cake, had our first dance to an old jazz song Stephanie loved, and stayed until the very last guest left. That night we drove to a bed and breakfast about 20 minutes from the venue. It was a charming old Victorian house with a 4-poster bed and a clawfoot tub. We opened a bottle of champagne, toasted to our future, and fell asleep wrapped around each other. I fell asleep that night, thinking I had just lived the best day of my life. I had no idea the worst was only weeks away. The first week after the wedding felt like an extension of the honeymoon, even though we had not gone anywhere yet. We had planned to take a proper trip later, maybe to the coast or even Hawaii if we could save up. For now, we just enjoyed being newlyweds in our little apartment. But about 5 days in, I started noticing something strange. Stephanie was on her phone a lot, more than usual. I would walk into the room and she would be smiling at her screen, but the second she heard me, she would flip the phone over or slide it into her pocket. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was just friends and family congratulating us. We had gotten a lot of messages and cards, but when I asked her about it one evening, "Who is that?" I said casually. She seemed to tense up for just a second before answering. "Oh, just old college friends, sending their congrats." Her voice was light, breezy. I wanted to believe her, so I did. But there was this tiny knot in my stomach that had not been there before. By the second week, things started shifting in small ways. Stephanie had always gone to the gym a couple of times a week, usually on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. But suddenly she was going almost every day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. When I asked her about it, she said she wanted to stay healthy for us, that being married made her want to take better care of herself. That sounded reasonable. That sounded sweet even. So, I supported it. The thing was, I worked long days. I left for the job site around 6:30 in the morning and usually got home around 6 in the evening, sometimes later if we were pushing to finish a project. Stephanie worked in marketing with pretty regular hours, 9 to 5. She used to be home when I got there. Dinner sometimes already. Started the apartment smelling like garlic or fresh bread. But now I would come home to an empty apartment. She would not get back until 8 or 9 at night. When I asked where she had been, she said she had gone to the gym and then grabbed dinner with her gym friends, Danielle mostly. A woman she said she had met in a spin class. I wanted to be the supportive husband, the guy who trusted his wife, so I did not push. But I started to feel lonely. We had just gotten married, and I barely saw her. One Tuesday night I suggested we go out for dinner, just the two of us. A date night. She hesitated, said she was really tired, and just wanted to stay in. Okay, I said. We can order pizza and watch a movie. She agreed, but the whole night she seemed distracted. She kept checking her phone, smiling at the screen, typing quick responses. When I asked if everything was okay, she said of course, just group chat stuff with the girls. But she would not look me in the eye when she said it. 3 weeks into our marriage, the physical intimacy started to fade. Stephanie used to be affectionate. She would hold my hand while we watched television, curl up against me, in bed, kiss me goodnight, even when she was exhausted. Now she sat on the opposite end of the couch. She went to bed before me most nights, saying she had a headache or was just really tired. When I climbed into bed later, she was always turned away from me, already asleep or pretending to be. I tried not to take it personally. Maybe she was just adjusting to married life. Maybe I was overthinking. But I was not overthinking. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just did not want to face it. One Friday night, about a month after the wedding, Stephanie told me she was going out for a girls' night. Danielle and some others from the gym were meeting at a bar downtown. I told her to have fun. Tried to sound encouraging, even though part of me wanted to ask if I could come along, but I did not. I stayed home, watched a game, and tried not to think about the growing distance between us. She came home after midnight, and I could smell the alcohol on her before she even got close. She stumbled a little, taking off her shoes, giggling to herself. I asked if she had fun. She said it was great, that Danielle was hilarious, that they had danced and had too many cocktails. Then she went straight to the bathroom and took a long shower before coming to bed. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering when my wife had become a stranger. The next morning I woke up before her. She had left her phone on the kitchen counter charging. I was making coffee when it buzzed with a text notification. The screen lit up and I saw the preview without even trying. Last night was amazing. Cannot wait to see you again. The name at the top just said, D. My heart started pounding. Who was D? I stared at the phone, debating whether to unlock it, and read the full conversation. But I could not do it. I have always believed in respecting privacy, even in a marriage. Plus, I did not want to be that guy, the paranoid husband, snooping through his wife's messages. Maybe D was Danielle. Maybe it was innocent. When Stephanie came out of the bedroom, hair still damp from her shower, I asked as casually as I could, "Who is D?" She froze for just a fraction of a second, then recovered. "What do you mean?" "Someone texted you," I said. "Said last night was amazing." Her face flushed slightly. "Oh, that is just Danielle. We had such a good time last night. She is already planning the next outing." She laughed, grabbed her phone, and walked back into the bedroom. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something in her voice did not match her words. The way she had hesitated, the way she would not quite meet my eyes. For the first time since I had known Stephanie, I felt a seed of doubt plant itself in my chest. That doubt grew over the next week. I could not shake the feeling that something was off. Stephanie kept going to the gym every evening. She kept coming home late. She kept smiling at her phone and hiding the screen whenever I walked by. The affection between us had disappeared almost completely. We were living like roommates, not newlyweds. I tried talking to her. One night, about 5 weeks after the wedding, I sat her down and asked, directly, Is everything okay? Are you happy? She looked at me with what seemed like genuine confusion. Of course I am happy, Bryant. Why would you ask that? I told her I felt like we were drifting apart, that I missed her, that I wanted us to spend more time together. She said she understood that she had just been trying to establish a routine, that she would make more effort. She hugged me, kissed my cheek, and promised things would get better. They did not get better. A few nights later, on a Wednesday, she said she was going to the gym again. I told her I loved her as she walked out the door. I drove in the direction of her gym, staying a few cars behind her the whole time. But she did not go to the gym. She drove right past it and kept going into North Portland towards the Pearl District. She parked on a side street near a trendy bar I had never been to. I parked a block away and watched as she got out of her car, checked her reflection in the window, and walked inside. My hands were shaking. I waited a few minutes, then walked up to the bar and looked through the front window. I drove in the direction of her gym, staying a few cars behind her the whole time. But she did not go to the gym. She drove right past it and kept going into North Portland towards the Pearl District. She parked on a side street near a trendy bar I had never been to. I parked a block away and watched as she got out of her car, checked her reflection in the window, and walked inside. My hands were shaking. I waited a few minutes, then walked up to the bar and looked through the front window. And there she was, sitting in a booth with a man. A tall guy with blonde hair, wearing a button-down shirt and jeans. They were laughing, leaning close to each other. As I watched, Stephanie reached across the table and put her hand on his. He turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to flip the table and demand to know what the hell was going on. But I could not move. I just stood there on the sidewalk, watching my wife hold hands with another man, and felt my entire world crack apart. After a few minutes, I walked back to my truck and drove home. I got there before she did, and sat in the dark living room, trying to process what I had just seen. When she came home an hour later, she walked in humming to herself, completely relaxed. "How was the gym?" I asked from the shadows. She jumped, startled. "Oh my God, Bryant, you scared me." "It was good. I did a lot of cardio. Then I grabbed a smoothie with Danielle." Her voice was so casual, so normal, like she had not just spent the evening holding hands with some guy at a bar. I did not confront her. Not yet. I needed more information. I needed to understand who this man was and what exactly was going on. Over the next couple of days, I could not stop thinking about it. I remembered Stephanie had mentioned an ex-boyfriend once back when we first started dating. His name was Derek. They had dated in college, been together for a few years, and broken up about 3 years before she and I met. She had said they wanted different things, that it ended amicably, that she had not spoken to him in years. I went back through her old Facebook photos, scrolling through albums from her college days. And there he was, Derek. Tall, blonde, the same guy I had seen her with at the bar. My stomach turned. She was seeing her ex. My wife, my newlywed wife, was sneaking around with the man she used to love. I could not eat. I could not sleep. I went to work every day and went through the motions, hammering nails and cutting boards, but my mind was somewhere else. At home, I watched Stephanie carefully. She acted completely normal, like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek when she left for work. She asked about my day when she got home. She lied so easily it made my skin crawl. On a Wednesday night, 6 weeks after our wedding, Stephanie told me she had to work late. There was a big campaign launch coming up, and her team needed to finalize some materials. She would probably be home around 10 or 11. I said okay, told her not to work too hard. She smiled, grabbed her laptop bag, and left. I knew she was lying. I knew she was not going to work, and I knew I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. So I did something I am not proud of. I opened her laptop, which she had left at home. She usually took it to work, but today she had forgotten it. Or maybe she just did not need it because she was not actually working. The laptop was still logged into her iMessage account. I opened it, my hands shaking, and scrolled to her messages. And there at the top of the list was a conversation with Derek. I started reading, and with every line my heart shattered a little more. Derek had texted, "I cannot believe you are actually married now." Stephanie had replied, "I know. It feels surreal." He asked, "Do you regret it?" She said, "Sometimes. I think I rushed into it." He wrote, "You know I never stopped loving you." She replied, "I know. I never stopped either." He asked, "Leave him. Come back to me." She said, "It is complicated. Give me time." He sent, "Tonight was perfect, just like old times." She wrote back, "I miss this. Miss us." I scrolled up. The messages went back weeks. No months. They went back to before the wedding. I found a conversation from 2 weeks before our wedding day. Derek had asked, "Are you sure about this wedding?" Stephanie had said. "I have to." I already said yes. He said, "But you love me." She replied, "I do. But Bryant is stable. He is safe." Derek wrote, "Safe is not love." Stephanie answered, "I will figure it out after the wedding." I sat there staring at the screen, unable to breathe. Our entire wedding had been a lie. She had married me knowing she still loved someone else. She had stood at that altar and promised forever, while planning to figure it out later. I was not her husband. I was her safety net, her backup plan, the stable guy she settled for. I do not know how long I sat there. Time seemed to stop. All I could feel was this crushing weight on my chest, like my ribs were caving in. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my entire future around, had never really been mine at all. At 11:15, I heard her key in the lock. I did not move. I just sat there in the dark living room, the laptop open in front of me, the messages glowing on the screen. She opened the door, turned on the light, and froze when she saw me. "Bryant," she said, her voice uncertain. "What are you doing up?" I did not answer. I just turned the laptop around so she could see the screen. Her face went white. The color drained so fast I thought she might faint. "Who is Derek?" I said. My voice was calm, too calm, like I was asking about the weather. She opened her mouth, closed. It opened it again. "Bryant, I can explain." "No," I said. "You cannot. I read everything. I know you have been seeing him. I know you were seeing him before we even got married." I stood up and she took a step back. "I know you never loved me. I was just the safe choice, the stable one, the guy you settled for while you figured out how to get back with your ex." Tears started streaming down her face. "That is not true," she said, but her voice cracked. "I do love you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You love stability. You love safety. You do not love me. You married me because I was convenient, because I was there, because I would take care of you while you decided what you really wanted." She was sobbing now, reaching for me, but I stepped away. "Please, Bryant. Please let me explain." "There is nothing to explain," I said. "You made your choice. You made it weeks ago. Hell, you made it before you even walked down the aisle." I walked past her into the bedroom. She followed, still crying, still trying to talk. I pulled my duffel bag out of the closet and started throwing clothes into it. "What are you doing?" she asked, panic rising in her voice. "I am leaving," I said simply. "You cannot leave," she said. "Where will you go?" "I do not know," I replied, stuffing my toiletries into a smaller bag. "And I do not want you to know." I grabbed my laptop, my external hard drive with all my work files, my passport, and the few things that really mattered to me. She stood in the doorway, shaking. "What about us?" she whispered. "What about our life?" I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her. "There was never an us," I said. "That was all in my head. You were playing house while waiting for your real love to come back. Well, congratulations. You can have him now." I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked to the front door. She followed, sobbing, begging me to stay to talk, to work it out. But there was nothing to work out. She had made her choice long before tonight. I had just been too blind to see it. "Bryant, please," she said one last time as I opened the door. I turned back. "Goodbye, Stephanie." Then I walked out, got into my truck, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I could see her standing in the doorway, lit up by the porch light. But I did not look back. I just kept driving. I drove all night. I left Portland at 3 in the morning, headed south with no particular destination in mind. I just needed to get away. Away from that apartment. Away from that life. Away from the lie I had been living. I stopped at a rest area near the Oregon-California border around dawn and sat in my truck watching the sun come up over the mountains. My phone was blowing up. 17 missed calls from Stephanie. Texts that I did not bother reading. I blocked her number. I did not want to hear her excuses, her apologies, her desperate attempts to fix something that was never real in the first place. I just wanted silence. I kept driving and ended up in San Diego by late afternoon. I had never been there before, but it seemed far enough. A city where nobody knew me, where I could disappear and start over. I found a cheap motel near Ocean Beach and checked in for the week. The room was small and plain, but it was mine. No shared space, no shared lies. The first few days were the hardest. I spent most of my time walking along the beach trying to make sense of everything. I kept replaying the past few months in my head, all the signs I had ignored, the secretive phone calls, the late nights, the distance. I had seen it all, but I had convinced myself it was nothing. I had wanted so badly to believe in us that I had ignored the truth staring me right in the face. I blamed myself for a while. Why had I not asked more questions? Why had I not confronted her sooner? Why had I been so naive? But eventually I realized that was not fair. I had not done anything wrong. I had loved her honestly. I had trusted her completely. She was the one who had chosen to lie. She was the one who had stood at an altar and made promises she had no intention of keeping. I called my parents after a few days. My mom cried when I told her what had happened. My dad was furious. "Come home, son," he said. "Let us take care of you." But I was not ready to go back. I needed time alone, time to figure out who I was outside of that marriage. I told them I would be okay, that I just needed a little space. They understood, even though I could hear the worry in their voices. I contacted a lawyer and started the process of annulment. I wanted the marriage erased like it had never happened, because in a way, it had not. It had been built on lies from the start. Stephanie did not fight it. She signed the papers without argument. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she was just relieved. I did not care. After 2 weeks in the motel, I started looking for work. I found a construction company in San Diego that was hiring. They needed a foreman for a residential project, someone with experience managing crews and timelines. I interviewed, got the job, and started the following Monday. The pay was actually better than what I had been making in Portland. I took it as a sign that maybe leaving was the right thing after all. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in North Park, a neighborhood full of young professionals and artists. It was nothing fancy, but it was clean and quiet. I filled it with the basics: a bed, a couch, a table. I did not need much. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I developed a routine. I woke up early every morning and went for a run along the bay. The fresh air and the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement cleared my head. I worked hard during the day, throwing myself into the projects. Building things had always been therapeutic for me. There was something satisfying about taking raw materials and turning them into something solid and real. After work, I would read or take long walks through the neighborhood. I joined a beach volleyball league and met a few people. One of them, a guy named Marcus, had been through a divorce a couple of years earlier. He got it. He did not push me to talk, but when I needed to, he listened. 3 months after I left Portland, the annulment was finalized. I got the papers in the mail and felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. Legally, officially over. Stephanie had sent a few emails in the weeks after I left apologizing, asking if we could talk. I never responded. There was nothing left to say. Eventually, the emails stopped. I did not date. I was not ready. I did not even think about it. I just focused on rebuilding myself. I took an online course in project management. I started saving money again, this time for my own future. I thought about what I wanted, really wanted, without anyone else in the picture. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. 6 months after I drove away from Portland in the middle of the night, I found myself sitting on the cliffs at Sunset Cliffs, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. The ocean stretched out endlessly in front of me. I thought about everything that had happened. The wedding, the betrayal, the pain, the escape. I did not regret leaving. If I had stayed, I would have been trapped in a lie, living with someone who did not truly love me, wondering every day if she was thinking about him. Leaving had been the hardest thing I had ever done, but it had also been the most necessary. I had chosen myself. I had chosen truth over comfort, and that had saved me. I did not hate Stephanie anymore. Honestly, I felt sorry for her. She was someone who did not know what she wanted, who could not be honest with herself or anyone else. That was her burden to carry, not mine. I had loved her with everything I had. I had been real. That was enough. I did not need her to validate that. Sitting there on those cliffs, I realized something important. Love should not require you to settle for being someone's safety net. You cannot fix someone who does not want to be honest, and walking away is not giving up. Sometimes it is the bravest thing you can do. It is choosing yourself when no one else will. I thought about the future. Maybe someday I would meet someone new, someone who would choose me first, not as a backup plan, someone who would be honest and present and real. Or maybe I would not. Maybe I would build a life on my own, and that would be enough. Either way, I was going to be okay. I never went back to Portland. I never saw Stephanie again. And you know what? I do not regret it for a second, because staying in a lie is easier than leaving. But living in truth, even when it hurts, that is where real freedom begins. I stood up from the cliff, brushed the sand off my jeans, and walked back toward my car. The sun had set completely now, and the first stars were starting to appear in the darkening sky. I had a whole life ahead of me, a life built on honesty and self-respect, a life where I would never again settle for being someone's second choice. And that, more than anything, felt like coming home. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from something you loved because staying would have destroyed you? Have you ever chosen yourself when it was the hardest thing to do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about life, love, and finding your way through the hardest moments. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we deserve more than being someone's plan B. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope wherever you are, whatever you are going through, you find the courage to choose yourself. Take care of yourselves out there. You are worth more than you know.